because he was talking about darnel. And every farmer knew that wheat and darnel were almost indistinguishable. For the trained farmer, with the trained eye, no farmer could say, oh, this is wheat, this is darnel, because they were indistinguishable. They grow to the same height, they smell the same, they emit the same fragrance, they look identical, they have the same texture. So guess what will happen? In the process of trying to pull up some weeds, you may unintentionally pull up some wheat who wants to grow and become something. You pull it up and you say, no, I'm wheat, please don't pull me up. Because you cannot tell the difference between wheat and weeds. Now, if you think Jesus is talking about a farm in Palestine, you missed it. He's not talking about Israel. He's talking about Louisville. He's not talking about them, he's talking about us. What he is saying is that none of us in here has enough sense to really judge or to classify anyone. That sometimes we are guilty of misclassifying people. That sometimes people we think are weeds are really weak. They're weak. They may look like weeds. They may dress like weeds. But they are really weak. They just are undeveloped weak. Unnurtured weak. In other words, take for example the school system. So many kids who go to the school system get misclassified. The teacher looks at them and makes an assessment of that child based on erroneous information, based on prejudices, and say, oh, that's weed. That's weeds. Look at that weed. Look at his pants sag. Weed. Look at his haircut. Weeds. And not knowing you're dealing with wheat, you're dealing with a genius, but it's undeveloped wheat. It's wheat that has not been nurtured. It's wheat that has not had the type of environment maybe it needs to grow, but it's still wheat. How many times we've made an appraisal and evaluation about somebody? We thought we had a friend. We said, oh, that's my girlfriend. That's my boo. That's my boy. That's my homeboy. You thought they were weak until you got blessed. Until you moved up. And then you soon discovered that the person whom you thought was weak was nothing but weeds. Impersonating wheat. You got to be careful about judging people. You got to be careful about thinking everybody who pats you on the back is weak. And everybody maybe who tells you what you don't want to hear is weeds. Young people have this problem big time. Young people think that just because their parents say no, or their parents has an agenda for them, they think, oh, my mama, my daddy is weeds. They don't know nothing. Mark Twain said about his father, he said he was the dumbest man I ever met when I was 14 years old. Mark Twain said, no man could be dumber than my father when I was 14. He said, but when I turned 21, it amazed me how smart my father really was. He grew during those 6 or 7 years. He grew. Well, it wasn't that his daddy grew. It was that he grew. And some of you who classify your parent as weeds, and you think you weed at 15. You turn 23 and try to get a job, and then all of a sudden you realize, no, mama wasn't weed. I was. That's why now when you get 23 or 24, when you get about 27, you start having your kids, then you find yourself saying the same thing to your kids that your mama tried to say to you. See, grandchildren is mama's payback. Grandchildren are your mama's payback. Amen. You think tell who's weed, who's wheat. It's true when it comes to race. So many brothers back in the day, still got them today. Brothers back in the day, we say, oh yeah, I'm down with radical militancy. Look at me with my fist in the air. Ungawa, power to the people. Look at me, I got my kente cloth on and my kufi, made in China. Down with the brothers. And then all of a sudden, you find out that whom you thought, because he was look like you, was weed, was really weeds. And then the white brother whom you assumed was not with you. You discover, well, I thought he was weak, but you know what, weeds, but look at him, look who helped me. Look who gave me a chance. He's weak. And we will never advance. You hear me? We will never advance. I don't know how long it's going to take us before we as a people in Louisville, Philadelphia, Chicago, and near these urban areas where there's Indianapolis, where crime and violence and shooting has just taken over. And the only people we talk to politically is Democrats. Because we've been brainwashed to think that the only people who mean us any good are Democrats. Then, if the Democrats mean us so much good, and I'm not saying they don't, because I'm a Democrat. Okay, fine, I'm a Democrat. But my question is, why have not things changed? In all the years, why is it that in spite of the fact that we have a Democratic president who is African American, who loves African American people, to whom I voted for, how do you explain the fact that unemployment in the black community is 14.4%? And in other communities it's much less. In fact, the national unemployment rate is 7.4%. And we vote overwhelmingly Democrat and will not talk to a Republican because we have been bamboozled, to quote Malcolm, into thinking that just because somebody walks in here and says, I'm a Democrat, that they have your best interest at heart, and just because somebody says, I'm a Republican, you won't talk to them. Can I define insanity? Insanity, someone said, is to continue to do the same thing and expect to get different results. You ought to talk to anybody who wants to talk with you, because there are Democrats that have wheat and weeds in them, and there are Republicans that have wheat and weeds in them, and you have to be discerning enough to be able to know that everybody is not all wheat and everybody is not all weeds. He said, let them grow together. Let them grow together. Leave them alone. And let them grow together until the harvest. Now the good news is there's going to be a harvest. The good news is that there's going to be a day when you don't have to deal with any more weeds. I mean, there's not going to be any weeds. You're not going to have to deal with any headaches. There's not going to be any weeds. There's not going to be a problem with the bridge. You're going to be able to get across the bridge. No more weeds. But hear me. That's a long time. So in the meantime, since you got to deal with weeds, what are you going to do? Well, the writer says, let both grow together. Which is to say that in spite of the fact that there are weeds and toxic things around you, guess what God will enable you to do? Keep on growing. You don't have to have the weeds move out of your life as a prerequisite for you to keep on growing. You can grow even in the midst of the weeds. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm just talking to Kevin loud enough for y'all to hear it, but hear me, I need to hear this myself. Because you see, I'm doing work in a weedy part of the city. Amen. You're not supposed to have this in California. maybe out on Blanket Baker, where Southeast Christian is, that great church. But not this in California, yes, because you can grow even in a weedy situation. And right down the street from us, there's a college that has a retention rate for African Americans that is higher than U of A. And it's across the street from College Court in the 40203 zip code. It's in a weedy situation, but it's growing in the midst of a weedy situation. Because you don't have to be, God might not remove all the weeds. He might say, guess what? I'm going to give you some miracle growth. So that right there in the midst of toxic haters, I will blow you up and help you to grow, and help you develop, help you to achieve in the midst of toxic folk. It's a wonderful thing when you know you've got toxic folk around you. But in spite of that, they cannot prohibit you from becoming what God plans for you to be. You don't have to be quarantined from weeds. You're not so weak and fragile that you can't deal with the weeds that are around you, because they are all around you, weeds. You can still pay your bills, grow, finish your degree. Folk don't have to like you. They can talk about you. Who gives a hoot? They're not controlling your joy. They don't control your peace. They're not in control of your agenda. So many of us are right now upset because of some weedy somebody that's done something to us or said something about us. Who cares? If God be for you, who then can be against you? Amen. Amen. In fact, some of us, if we would be honest, listen, we say, you know what? You look at me now, you see where I am, but you don't know all the weeds I have to step over. Some of y'all, every day when you get up, you've been stepping over weeds all year. You've been stepping, but you're still stepping. You got to go to work tomorrow, and you got to go to work with Brother Weed. You're in a cubicle next to the Sister Weedy sister. Your manager's name is Brother Weed. You all around weed, but it ain't stopped you. Amen. Just because you got a crazy mama don't mean you have to be crazy. Just because you don't know your daddy don't mean you have to be like your daddy. Just because your daddy was a Rolling Stone don't mean you have to be that way. Am I right about it? Just because everybody in your neighborhood is shooting guns, acting like a donkey, does not mean that you have to be the same way. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I believe I've got some witnesses in here who is not ashamed to say, you look at me where I am. You see where I work. You see what's happening in my life. But you don't know all the weeds that I was surrounded around all my life. But I still grew in spite of the weeds. I'm here to tell you that you need to quit paying so much attention to your weeds. Some of y'all upset right now won't say amen because some weedy niggas will mess your heart up. You need to quit thinking about your weeds. Don't take your weeds emotionally to bed with you when you're tossing and turning over some weed. And by all means, quit trying to change weeds. You already know they weeds. Leave the weeds alone. You already know they weeds. You say, I don't know why they don't like me, because they weeds. I don't know why they mistreat me, because they weeds. I don't know why, amen, I try to be good to them. When are you going to wake up? When they were planning